This is a kind of a nostalgia thing for me because I'm going to go back and cover an area from management science, statistics, that I used to teach when I was in a former life as a university professor for 6 years. I came in as a new guy and had all the numbers classes for all the undergraduates hated me. I had principles of finance, managerial accounting, business math for time value of money, and business statistics in addition to this. So all the accounting students got it well. Everybody else, the reason they weren't accounting students is because they had trouble with numbers. And so my attempt was to try to make different areas interesting to people as best I could. And one of them I've always liked has been waiting lines, queuing theory. So I want to talk about waiting lines. Don't make me wait. Waiting lines are queues. We've all experienced this. Even with dinner just a few minutes ago, you had to stand in line and wait to go through. But what were you going to do? Run off? No, probably not. But we all experienced this. This is a line in Africa. You may think it's bad at the DMV, right? But I got a friend of a missionary in Africa who waited in line all day trying to get someone to stamp a permit, and he had to go home because he had not been processed that day. And stood in line again. So I mean, it's crazy, right? That is an immigration customs line in Johannesburg, South Africa that I was in. It was a 4-hour wait by the time I was counting. What was my cost of waiting there? If I had not somehow developed a knee injury, I would have missed my flight back to London. So I was able to somehow hop over the gate and get on up and get out. Terrible, right? Terrible. These next couple of pictures are ladies standing in line in Africa waiting for a chance to get a Bible. Okay? The line went around, they stood around in the hot sun, and then they ended up starting pushing each other because we did not have enough. Wow. Right? Did not have enough. That was a line the other night in Kroger.
Out of curiosity,
Kroger's a grocery store.
What did they have to do to get the Bible?
Stand in line.
So they went through the building, they were given a Bible?
So the picture's here. There is no building. They're outside as we drove up. There's no electricity, no water.
Okay, you drove up. Why couldn't you say, line up here, and you have 2 or 3 people carrying boxes and walk down and just give them out?
Because they were going to the people that go to church there, rather than simply anybody coming in to get them and then
so you
sell
clarified who they were.
We were, yeah. That was the reason. And we just didn't have enough. There's not enough for everybody. But I was just pointing out, lines are everywhere, including here at Kroger. This was a Friday night at 8:30. And it wasn't that busy, but they had one server open. Yeah. Right? Have you ever stood in a line like that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen people with the stuff they wanted to buy look and say it's not worth it, put it on the shelf in front of them and walk off?
I've done it.
It's kind of humorous to me when it's ice cream. You know? But I took this picture and posted it to Facebook. I tagged the Kroger and did a hashtag should have gone to Publix. It was trending, right? I'm also wondering if my picture is on the wall there somewhere because it was just crazy. Why didn't they open another checkout line? Why were the self-service things closed? They were. Who knows, right? So we all experience this. Why? To a business, there are 2 costs involved in waiting line circumstances. There is the cost of service and the cost of waiting. Reducing one tends to increase the other, and that, of course, is the problem. One cost is a visible accounting cost. The cost of service shows up on the books. You're paying the workers, right? Management isn't always noted for thinking through things sometimes, right? Why are your labor costs so high? That's because we got to get the labor costs down. Well, what happens? Other costs that don't show up on the books can go through the roof. It's really more of this kind of thing. To minimize the total cost, you have to sometimes have some of each cost. You're trying to minimize the total, not one or the other. And so here, your service level, right, is really going to be for the business where the cost is the cheapest. The problem is, what's the cost of waiting? That differs, right? It differs. The cost of waiting is not the same everywhere. So cost of service will be the cost of machines or servers. And as we have seen, as artificial intelligence and mechanization are getting even more advanced with computerized stuff, people are getting replaced. That's what those self-checkout counters at the Kroger's and the Walmarts are there. They don't have to, they pay the one-time cost for machines. They don't pay people anymore.
Oh, they pay one to watch four.
One to watch 4, 5, or 6. Quite right.
Yeah.
Quite right. So, as I say, you ever put down product and left a store? Have you ever driven past a fast food restaurant and kept going because the line of cars was out into the road? That's a cost of waiting because they didn't get your money, right? They did not get your money because you drove on past. Ever pulled out of a drive-through window line?
Yes.
I hate to do that, but sometimes that's kind of humorous because I've already ordered, but it's taking forever, and I'm like, forget it. They haven't paid yet. You pull out and drive on by, and then they're all mixed up because they're missing a customer.
Yeah, the other guy ate to get
They should have done a better job of providing service. What's the cost of waiting at a hospital?
Yes.
Could be. Okay. Is waiting important at a hospital? Yeah. Have you seen the billboards, of course, that have the 4 minutes for the ER or 98 minutes at the ER? I mean, that's important. It's important to make sure you take care of people. The way they do that is triage.
It's funny you mentioned that one because 15, 20 years ago, I had a minor injury, but I needed something sewn up, and it was late at night, so the ER is the only place I'm going to do it. So I called around to the local hospitals to ask, how long is the wait? They all thought that was the craziest question they'd ever heard. And now, as you say, it's up on billboards.
That's right. It's up on billboards. It's changed. The way you try to, you can't just do a first come, first served at a hospital because somebody's coming in with a huge hemorrhage. You know, I mean, sorry, you go to the front of the line. So you have some priority. Right? That's not the usual way it is at Kroger. At Kroger that night, I should have been the priority, obviously. Who cares about these other people? I mean, no, I'm kidding. How big a waiting room should you build? Think about that. Right? I mean, it is possible, I suppose, that the entirety of Pakistan could come to your office Monday morning, but it's probably unlikely. Do you have room for 4 waiting customers? 5? How big? What do you do? Restaurants. You ever gone to a restaurant and waits 2 hours? What do you do? Leave. But so it's an important cost, and you cannot ignore it. You cannot ignore it. Waiting area at a restaurant. So what are some of the issues? Right? You've got balking. That's where you get out of line and leave. Changing lines. You do that kind of stuff, right? That you solve that if you have one line to the bank window tellers, right? Where you got one line and all the servers. You just get mad. You stay put, but you never go back. I have that problem at one fast food restaurant. Since this will be public, I won't name them. But they're slow as can be all the time. I love the food, but I will not wait. I will not do it anymore. So my past service history in my mind is losing them sales. The management of the restaurant should have thought, maybe that's something we ought to address. Bad online reviews, Yelp, whatever, all that kind of stuff, or the Twitter handle of should have gone to Publix. You got lost sales, right? So the same thing happens internally at customers. Employees waiting in lines cost money. It used to be the idea of going to a tool room. If you had, everybody doesn't need one of every tool necessarily. You might go and check out some kind of machine or tool. If they're waiting in line trying to get processed, it's like if you're doing a lot of copying, standing in line at a copy machine queue or something like that. I mean, employee cost is cost as well. You can reduce the cost of waiting by increasing the service speed or capability, but that increases the cost of service. Or you can reduce the cost of service by cutting down employees, paying them less, but that increases the cost of waiting. Remember, both costs. The goal is to reduce the total, as we showed a second ago. What's the basic problems with waiting lines? Why do we have this issue? It's because you've got random arrivals and random service times. Some circumstances, the item for service shows up every 2 minutes. It's mechanical. That's a lot easier to handle. But think of the famous I Love Lucy episode with the candy. Yeah. Right? The stuff's coming out, Bangladesh shows up wanting a hamburger. You're going to have a problem. But you just never know. Studies have shown that many systems displays arrival that follow what's called the Poisson distribution. Okay? That's usually just simply assumed, although you would want to do some background checks. We're going to assume for our sample problems we're going to look at that it does the same. There's a higher probability in the lower tail over here to the left than over to the right. It might be possible, as I say, that all of Ireland could show up in 5 minutes, but it's probably unlikely. The other studies have shown that the service times follow a slightly different distribution, the exponential distribution. I'm not going to get into that, but most times are short, but chances of a much longer problem. And usually that's right in front of you.
Yep.
Right in front of you.
Always.
And it's this combination that's the killer, because you just never know what's going to happen. And the uninformed, the naive view says, you can serve more people on average than show up on average. What are you complaining about?
Cost.
Well, it's the random variability that kills you, and that's the naive of you to think that it's not a problem. So there are 5 characteristics I want to talk to you about in a stable system. Hold on, Richard. Let me get through it, because you're going to fuss at me about time in a minute.
No. No, I'm wondering if, for example, I consider that Americans don't understand cooning, but the Brits do better. So is the educational level of the customer a factor at all?
I don't know. I know that Africa doesn't understand queuing either. Certainly the people in the Johannesburg airport don't. I'm going to miss my flight. I don't care, sir. You know, that kind of thing. The reason I say stable system right there is because obviously if you open at 8 a.m., you don't have these conditions 3 minutes after you open. We're talking about when things have settled down, what's the average state of the system involving arrivals and service. That's what you're trying to mimic. There's one here, the P0, probability of 0. That's the probability nobody's waiting. In fact, it's really the probability the system's empty. There's nobody in the system. LQ.
That is 0, obviously.
No, it's not. That just means nobody's there. All the servers are there. Nobody's.
Never happened to me.
Have you ever walked in though and walked straight up to a server? Then that may have been that the probability was 0. I have gone to a restaurant, nobody was there. So that can't happen. That can't happen. It's usually 2 in the morning. LQ is the average number of customers waiting. L is the length of the line, and the Q is the queue, and the number of people in the queue. L is the average number in the system, and it's not LQ plus 1 because again you're talking average. You're talking average, and that's always a hard one to get across. Just trust me on that one. You can Google it, but just trust me. Then you have 2 other ones. The average time waiting before you were served. That's usually what gets people. Once you start helping somebody, they're usually not nearly as mad as standing there, you know, tapping their fingers, wondering when's somebody going to talk to me. And then the average time in the system. So there's 2 basic systems here. The first one we'll look at is 1 server, 1 line. There's 1 poor soul trying to help everybody, and everybody's in line in front of them. Okay? The other one will be multiple servers but 1 line. Think of the bank tellers.
Or
Next,
post office.
post office. Next, right, you got several people at the counters, 1 line. So we're going to look at each of those. And here's the post office, right?
All right.
Single server waiting line over here and the multiple server waiting line over there. Everybody's in the same queue, but you go to the first available window. Now, I know the oxymoron here. Okay, you're laughing, right? This is the post office. You have to assume, for the sake of argument, they are concerned about waiting time. And they seem to be. But here's the deal. Let's say we have a system where the arrivals are 5 per hour on average. Can you have 10 in an hour? Absolutely. Can you have nobody in an hour? Absolutely. We're talking the average. And the average service rate is 6 per hour. We're going to let the service rate be S and the arrivals be A. It's supposed to be lambda and mu. For some reason, Microsoft Equation Editor was really being a pain. So I used A and S right here. P0, the probability no one is there, is 1 minus the arrival rate divided by the service rate. So that's easy in this case. 1 minus 5, 6 is 1, 6. 16% chance that it's empty. By contrast, 83% chance something's going on. Something's going on because of 1 minus P0. I got that one. L, and these formulas are derived by very complicated math. It's like 2 or 3 pages in a giant textbook that I never want to see again. L is the arrivals divided by the difference between the service rate minus the arrivals, and LQ and all. So here they are, right? P0 is 1 minus 5 divided by 6, or 16.7% chance of being empty, 83% chance of busy. L would be 5 divided by 6 minus 5, or 5 people. In this circumstance, there's 5 people in that environment at any given time. W, 1 hour. When you go here to this place, you are there for an hour before you leave, on average. Okay?
Well, that doesn't mean an hour waiting, that means an hour in the system.
In the system. Here's the waiting stats. LQ is 4.17 people on average that have not been helped at any given moment. If you think of a spy hole up in the top right, looking down at the customers, and you just count 20 times a day how many people are waiting that you haven't helped, the average is 4.17. Well, yeah, maybe that's only 5 minutes at a time. No, they're waiting 0.83 hours before anybody ever says, "Thank you for coming, sir, can I help you?" I mean, what is that, 50 minutes or something like that? So no, not good, not good. Probability of busy, as I say, it's the government, who cares? Reality, it turns out if your utilization, your percentage of time busy is much above 75%, you're in trouble. In the old days in the economy, they used to talk about factory capacity utilization. They would always talk about that on the evening news. And it was, management says it needs to be 99% busy. I need to be at 99% capacity. The problem is, too many things can go on, right? Too many things happen. If it's much above 75 or 80, you're in trouble. It starts shaking and falling apart.
What you just said has historically been a problem in the world of mainframe computers, corporate computing environment.
Sure.
That the data processing managers, they want to run those machines 110% of capacity to show what smart managers they are, and advance.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's the naive view. They don't understand how that stuff works. Let's suppose in this case that the servers pay $10 an hour, okay? And let's assume that a waiting cost is $20 an hour. An hour of a customer waiting is worth $20. You've got to do a study to figure out what that is. You have to estimate. Have the guts to put a number on the paper. What would that be? Lost sales in the future because they don't come back. Insurance losses because they come back and they burn the place down. Who knows? Who knows, right? But there's a cost of waiting. The total cost per hour here would be $10 for paying the server, plus the 4 people who are waiting at any given time of any given day times $20 an hour. $93 an hour. Okay, so from a management perspective, you start talking $90 an hour, big deal. What's the manager actually see on the accounting books? 10. So that waiting cost is hidden, but it's the biggest cost. On those curves, you're way too far in terms of having too much waiting cost. So the total cost to the government, as I say, is $10 an hour, right? $10 an hour. All right, let's say that we, how to improve this? What could you do? You could replace the server, fire that slow person, get somebody here who knows what he's doing.
Not in the government.
It's a problem, isn't it? We're talking the government. You could have 2 desks. You could have 2 people, 2 servers. But that's costly. You can't hire people, and we got a hiring freeze. You could do online options. The post office has done this. Print your own labels. You don't go to the post office. That's not a bad approach. You could have, get the stamp, ship it yourself, never go to the post office. Some people do that. Let's look at the other model. This is for more than one server. The formulas are much more complicated. That's the formula for P0. Look at that. P0 is equal to 1 over the sum from n equals 0 to k minus 1. K is the number of servers you've got. Of 1 over n factorial, and I used to tell the students that's 1 over n times a divided by s, the ratio of the rivals to service to the nth power, the sum of all that stuff, right, from 0 to k minus 1, plus 1 over k times a over s to the k power, all that stuff, right? You sum all that kind of stuff. So that's just to get the probability that there's no one there. L is based off of another computation times p is the probability of 0 plus whatever. Anyway, there's the formulas, okay? P0 for this circumstance of 1 line, 2 servers, 5 arrival rate per hour, 5 service rate per hour. P0 is 41%. So you got 41% chance that nobody's there. Yes, sir?
How come you changed the status for it?
That's probably a typo. I was just looking at that. You were
Right. I'm following you, man.
That's right. L is 1. Just over 1 person in the system at a given time. LQ is only like an 1/8 of a person or a 1/6 of a person. Not too bad. W is only 12 minutes in the system. You're only waiting 2 minutes. Are you really going to get that irritated in 2 minutes? Maybe some of us, but compared to 50 minutes, that's a big and good improvement. Your total cost, and this should be the same as what we'd seen before, that is a typo. 2 servers, $20, plus only 0.175 times 20. So your total cost here is only $23 an hour versus $93 an hour. Big improvement. You wouldn't think necessarily doubling your service would cut it by a factor of 4. You would think maybe it'd cut it in half, right? Again, that's your common sense thought, but no, it doesn't work that way. It's often very counterintuitive, but very powerful. Here's a couple of other ones. Here's another approach. How many servers should you have to minimize your cost? How many servers? How many loading docks so you don't have the trucks waiting? How many simultaneous requests should your computer system be able to handle? Or, all that kind of stuff. Let's say customers arrive at 35 per hour. This is faster than the other one. So A is 35. Your average service times are 10 minutes. So that's 6 per hour, 60 divided by 10. Usually you have the average time for service, you got to do the division to get the rate, which goes into the formulas. So 35 per hour, and your servers can handle 6. Can you get by with one server? Why not? Why not?
The line will increase faster than the service.
Right? In the first hour, 35 people show up, you handle 6. You got 29 been there an hour. In the next hour, 35 more people show up. So what is that, 54? 64? And you only handle 6 of those, right? So that's when they burn the place down. So you can't What's the minimum you have to have to just be able to handle it? 6, that's right. The total service capability has to be at least somewhat greater than the arrivals on average. But the closer they are to each other, the more unstable it's going to be. So here, let's say an hour of waiting is $50 an hour. Servers are $12 an hour. What's the minimum number of servers? KS has to be greater than A, so K has to be at least 6. That's good. LQ is what you want to look at. Usually is. The cost usually occurs when people are standing there and they have not been helped. That's what irritates me, right? And that's what irritates most people. You don't usually wait to get up to the server and say, "Oh, just forget it," after waiting 2 hours. Once you've gone through all the pain, go finish it now. Finish it. So we want to compute, the way you go this is you compute your total cost with 6 servers, 7 servers, until you see it bottom out. Remember, the cost has to do this, and it will. So where am I on the curve with 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever it is? So here we go. Remember, the bottom out. There's the formulas. And the students had to do this before. They didn't have programmable calculators, and there wasn't a lot of Excel either. Although I did put these formulas into my 17B2, students saw me get an answer by punching a few buttons, offered me $200 on the spot. But you can't take money from the students. That doesn't look good, right? So here we
How
go.
much did you sell it for?
6 servers, okay? 35, 6, and 6. Those are the characteristics. Arrival, service rate, and servers. P0 turns out to be almost 0. That's bad. Okay? There's somebody there all the time. LQ is 32.3. Whoops. 32 people in line not having been helped on average, and it's 5.4 hours. Okay? That's Africa. On a good day. Your total cost for this would be 6 times the $12 per hour for the servers, plus 32 times 50, or 168,000. I'm sorry, on my screen it had not. On that one it actually is, but $16.89 an hour. Most of it waiting. Okay, so that's your starting point. Is that the best? Who knows? You don't know yet. Surely not, but you don't know. You got to have at least 2. All right, so let's try 7. Same things. P0, it's still almost 0. But, oh, look at that. LQ is only 2.8, just by adding 1 more server. So instead of 32 people waiting, not having been helped, you only got just under 3. The waiting time is 28 minutes.
Not great, but better.
It's better than 5 hours, but 28 minutes. Your total cost here is 7 times 12 plus the 2.8, more or less, times 50. 223 per hour. That's a dramatic drop. Is that the best? How do you know? How do you know when you've seen the best?
The next one is higher.
It's got to go up, right? So let's try the next one. Let's try 8. P0, look at that, man, it's still almost 0. LQ is less than 1. That's pretty good. The wait time's only a minute and a half. So your total cost here is 8 times 12 plus blah blah, it's 138 per hour. So it's still cheaper. Okay? Still cheaper.
Per person or per?
That's per hour of the operating circumstances. It's your It's not a cost per customer, it's
Oh, I
a cost
see.
to have the place running.
Oh, yeah, okay.
As you go across, which cost is going up? The service cost, right? And no matter what, that is, even though it's the accounting thinking, right, the management thinking, that is a certain cost. And there is still some fuzziness about the waiting cost. So you got to be careful, right? Sometimes you take a win where you can get it. That might be what I would do anyway, because I'm going to add an extra $12 an hour that's certain in the next one. How confident am I that waiting is $50 an hour, not 40? So here we go. Let's try 9. P0 still didn't go up much. LQ is a third of a person. They're in line 33 seconds. That's pretty good. Step right up. Get out of here. You're done. Total cost is $123 per hour. See, you came down $15 an hour, but that's almost the amount that your service cost went up. So I would probably have stayed, I'd stay with 8. If this is me, I'd stay with 8 unless I really knew it was $50 an hour. That's what I would probably do. So it still hasn't bottomed out, but what happens with 10? What's my cost if I go to 10 for the servers? 10 times 12, 120? Yeah, no. You're not going to do 120 certain and have just some fuzziness on maybe the last buck and a half or something. So Excel can calculate these things for you easily. You put the formulas in once, never touch them again. There are websites, you put in these things, hit compute, there it all is. But, even more exciting, you can do that on the 41CL. Because there is a gargantuan Q program that was in the PPC journal. I really had not noticed it before. It's huge. In volume 9, number 4, that's one of the largest issues they ever did, and it covers all these different states of queuing. Jackie's the reason it's in the 41CL. Jackie and Jake. Yes, I called him out twice now. There you go. Because it was in an electronic form. You could get it over there. Here's what it looks like. You say execute Q. It's actually QUE, right? You choose which model you want. You have to know which model is a single server, which one's the multi-server, and there's many kinds. There's a constant service arrival rate, right? It's always 2 per every 2 minutes, all that kind of thing. You got to know what you're doing. We're going to execute B. That's the one for multiple servers. I just happen to know that. You key in your arrival rate. The letters used here are different than the letters we had. So the arrival rate, I key in 35, which is what it is for this problem. And then prompts for the service rate. I key in 6, it computes P0. The P0 we had was about 0.004. So that's probably it. LQ, 32.34. That is the LQ we had. The 41CL, the Q program just computed it. And you can go on and do your costs after that, right? Straight on. So 41CL to the rescue again. If I were still teaching this, that's how I would have the students wanting to buy. I'd have them all with 41CLs is what I do. Monty would sell 30 or 40 more. But the real key here is that you can handle queuing issues if you think through it and can measure the average state. I look around now rather than just getting mad in lines because I can tell what would probably fix it if only people would listen. Any questions on waiting lines other than Richard at first? Tim.
Did you have a bad experience at the post office recently?
No. Actually, the post office people in the neighborhood I used to live in were great. I have Miss May loves me when I come in there. I just like to pick on. Felix?
TSA has a cost of waiting of 0, so that explains the experience of TSA because they don't care.
Well, that's because
everybody has to fly. And
you are a monopoly. What is the cost of waiting from a monopoly? What do you mean the cost of waiting?
That gives you very little. Why should they improve? Open more lines.
If the cost of waiting for a monopoly would be if people could petition to get the market opened up, right? You can't tick people off enough that could happen, but it's a government agency. What are the odds? Not very high.
And they leverage that, as I've recently taken advantage of, is if you give them money, they'll run you through the line more quickly.
You can pay to get up fast.
Yes,
That's right. Get it from the
TSA
customer.
pre-check. And what's interesting is the way they're like a drug dealer. So I had to fly down to Payson, Arizona recently, and I noticed my ticket had a little TSA pre-check symbol on it, which I thought was odd because I'd never signed up for it. Boy, boy. And then there's the empty pre-check line, which I walk through. Oh, you don't have to take off your shoes, sir. Oh, let me get my laptop. No, don't. Just go through. Here you go, sir. Well, this is cool. And so I go on lunch, and I don't know what happened, but I'm going to register for this. And so I get my birth certificate and everything, and I go down to the airport, and the guy, takes my fingerprints and says, "Oh, give me a week or so." And I said, "I got a question. The reason I'm here is because a month or two ago I flew, and I had this TSA pre-check thing in my ticket, and the experience was so great, I decided." And he says, "Yeah, we do that. We put it on people's tickets at random." Just to give them a little taste. And now, I stopped myself, fortunately, in time. That explains, fortunately, I thought myself in time, because the obvious question is, well, if the whole point of pre-check is you're going to do some enhanced background check on me beforehand to make sure I'm safe, isn't putting it on random people's tickets unsafe? But then I decided to shut up.
That assumes that the check's actually doing any good.
Yes, that's not all just.
Of course, global entry is the same thing. You go to the front of the line from coming back from overseas for customs and stuff like that. Jeremy?
What's the average wait time of people in the queue?
The people where, sorry?
In the queue.
On the example we were just looking at,
In general.
it depends. Depends on what the service capacity is. That's that WQ calculation. There's plenty of great website stuff for waiting lines. It really is. But what I would really like, this will be a success, if the next time you're standing in a line, you think about why the line is here, and if you were in charge, what could you do to try to fix it or improve it?
Well,
I fire the incompetent person a lot up here at the front, but still. I mean, if we go to dinner Sunday night all together, suppose we went over here to Longmore, what's the problem? Right? It's like Bangladesh showing up. 40 people. They don't expect 40 people in a minute and a half window. There's going to be a wait. Richard, I'll come back to you. Hold on, we'll talk about that. Hold on. Go ahead, Richard. I picked on you enough.
Which is faster, 2 servers, 1 queue, or the customer decides which line to get into? Two lines or 2 servers.
But these are self-adjusting queue, because often you say, well, this is long, I'm going to go to the other one.
Well, we did that the other day when we were buying the drinks at Walmart. We were behind somebody slow and backed up. That drives the operations research people batty, because it's very hard to get it all worked out because you've got chaotic behavior. It's really very bad.
Everybody knows that if you do that, the line you get into is the
It
one
could. It happens that sometimes. But that's why really many places, if they can get away with it, want you in 1 queue and you simply go to the first available window, because you're not going to get behind somebody that's slow in 1 line. That creates its own problems, because then you've got people mad that everybody else is getting faster treatment. But the problem is, of course, you've got all these people in line stretching all the way out, right? It makes the waiting obvious. So what do? You put the little gum and the candy on the stuff. Think about checking out at Fry's, right? You have to walk through a snake place of all the extra little stuff. You're looking at, you're not thinking, I'm waiting. You think, well, do I want that? Do I want that? Or you put mirrors.
Yeah.
Or in fancy restaurants like Benihana's, you have a waiting area where you go and you make them order drinks.
Yes.
They're waiting.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you get money out of them in that case.
Two servers with 2 lines is always slower.
It's always what?
Is slower with separate lines. And the way you can see that is because at some point one of the servers will be idle while the other one will have people queued up behind them.
Now if the people are paying attention to, they'll jump lines.
Well, but I'm talking mathematically.
You put an electric fence between the servers. Okay, Jeremy?
I've always bought a book.
I'm sorry?
I've always bought a book when I'm going to stand in line.
You always bought a book.
Yeah.
Then you make the cost of waiting invisible to you.
Exactly, to me, yes, absolutely.
But I mean, it's really important, and not just retail or stuff like this, because it's systems. I mean, systems, right? I mean, when you're hitting return on your browser because it isn't loading yet, what is it, latency or something? I mean, it's trying to ping to get a response, and who knows why? I mean, it could be everybody in your whole neighborhood hitting return on CNN at the same time.
Bloody eclipse.
So what do? Reload the page over and over again. That'll speed it up. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. I really used to enjoy teaching that stuff. I was going to do a linear programming graphing method and put graphs up here maybe next year. But waiting lines was always one of my favorites. So I wanted to share that with everybody. Any other questions? Waiting lines? Watch the lines around you.
I'm done waiting.
Don't make me wait.
I was thinking.